So now I'm going to invite Natasha and Jared and Michael to join me up on the stage for a conversation with all of you. So if any of you have been thinking of questions and you want to jot them down on pieces of paper, we're going to have volunteers come down the aisles and pick up your pieces of paper and bring them down to us here at the front. Okay, you're supposed to come up now. Yeah. So pass your pieces of paper to the aisles this way. And as I said, we've got volunteers that are going to come up and down the aisles and collect them and bring them to us. This is my Ellen moment. Last time I dressed up really much more elegantly, and now I thought, you know what, I'm going to kind of channel my inner Ellen. And she dresses very casual. I don't know if any of you have ever watched her show. She dresses more like this. So let's get the questions coming down. And I'm going to start to just kick off the Q&A here while they're collecting questions and bringing them down. And this is actually a question that came to us through the online RSVP page. And someone wrote to us and said, the social stigma around meds, around psychiatric medication, makes it, to use a phrase, tough to swallow. And I'm wondering if any of you could comment on your own, from a social perspective, the relationship that you've had with medication and the role that it's played in your recovery.
Go ahead. Well, I guess for me, what was always tough was that it was almost like a second race to run, where I had a lot of friends that, were quite accepting that I was dealing with some sort of a mental illness, but there was this whole other belief that medication, that there's so many stereotypes around it. It's such like a wave of, I think one time I saw someone on Pierce Brosnan or one of those talk shows saying that it's the meds are the reason for all the chaos in the United States, and for me that was a scary thing to go through. And so actually, still today, I don't think I'd ever be I find it tough to be very public about it. I'll always find a private way to take my medication, but it has gotten easier since I started speaking publicly about this.
Yeah, I think for myself, that is the crux of whatever stigma I still feel. Crazy enough as it is, I've now begun to associate bipolar and mental illness with positive things, like the long list of shakers and movers that have dealt with the mental illness have really, and I really believe that. But there's this one aspect of when I do take medication that really I really struggle with that. And I don't think I've won that battle yet. And I think there's something also, besides the stigma, I think there's something also really inherently bizarre of taking a medication to change the way you think. When you take a medication, let's say for your diabetes, the mind is separate from the body, and it doesn't really mess with you, okay? Like, I need medication for my diabetes. But that's where I think it differs with our emotional and our cognitive self. When you take a medication that, alters the way you think and act, it's really weird for me. It's this idea that Michael Schrader in itself, without medication, is in the wrong, right? So you can tell I've overthought this a little bit. just pop the pill, right? Yeah. So that's where I'm at. Mental illness, everything falls on a spectrum, and for the most part, my mania, my bipolar disorder is relatively mild, and so it gives me, I guess, a luxury to sometimes not take medication, sometimes do. But the key there is, prior to my wife Deborah, it was my brother. I was still very, very close to my brother, and now my wife. I have to allow someone that I trust and love to say, dude, like, chill out, or you should go on your meds. Like, you're just getting obnoxious. You're getting a little over the top, right? And I trust my brother and my wife. And when they say, look, it's time for you to take your medication, I do.
I think the only problem I ever had with medication was the self-stigma aspect. So thinking that, I'm taking medication because there's something wrong with me, rather than knowing that it's just helping to balance me. And I see it as a tool now that is used amongst other tools. So to me, it's nothing other than, I need to exercise. I also need to take my medication. It's become very casual for me. I think that's just because I'm very vocal about it too. But there is, I can see, to me, when I went in, they first told me, okay, you need to take medication for your bipolar disorder. I said, okay, just make this stop. Because I was depressed and I just didn't want to continue taking it. So I never really dealt with the social stigma in a weird way. It's always been very internal, and having to battle with myself to know that I am not wrong. That I am, just because I have a condition doesn't make me a inherently bad or negative person. I just need to fine tune some things.
Okay. There's some great questions here, but please keep them coming, because I'm going to, as I said, I'm going to cluster some of them, because some of them are a little bit similar to each other. A couple of questions around naming illnesses: schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, OCD. Some people believe that naming these illnesses causes stigma, like the act of naming them perpetuates in some way the stigma. What thoughts do you guys have about that?
I don't believe it. I think in not talking about it, it feeds power into the stigma. I think there's something wrong in saying someone is schizophrenic or someone is bipolar. It's as absurd as saying, referring to someone as a diabetic or a cancerist. I don't even know if there's such a word. A heart and stroke sufferer. Like, everyone's dynamic. So I have a problem with this whole idea they're a depressive or they're schizophrenic, because that's. But I think we have to desensitize ourselves to these words. I think that question comes about because the word schizophrenia or mental illness is so powerful that we don't want to talk about it. But yeah.
I think we do need to talk about it, and we do need to desensitize it. I think we also need to respect what people understand about their own illnesses or their own labels. So, like, I choose to say I have bipolar, not say I am bipolar. But I've been doing my own little research lately and noting that some people really identify with saying I'm bipolar, and some people really want I have bipolar. And these aren't negative things to them. That's something that they embrace about themselves. They love this aspect of themselves. So we cannot take that away from themselves. We cannot say, you're not allowed to identify with this thing. So I think we just need to understand it more, and we need to realize it's not the big bad wolf. We just need to equalize ourselves. So if you say, I really prefer to be called schizophrenic, I'll be like, okay, why? And we can have a conversation. So really just having a conversation about these things is what we need to be doing rather than not talking about it.
I mean, for me, the only time it's really helped me was sometimes when I was trying to explain to someone maybe what I'm going through or what I've been dealing with. Just because, there are times where, in the past when I said, oh yeah, like I'm nervous or I'm just anxious or something, that was almost part of the social stigma where people can be like, oh, well, everyone gets nervous, like, suck it up. Whereas, having something more to talk about, like recognizing it as something that you're actually dealing with, really helped me.
Okay. There's quite a few questions here about how you open up to friends and family. How do you open up those conversations? And what your experiences have been around when you tell, when you don't tell people about a mental illness or a mental health challenge. Would you generally advise people to tell friends and family, or under what kinds of circumstances? When does it feel like it's the right thing to do?
I think it's the right thing to do when you feel okay with yourself, when you can confidently say, like, if I do encounter stigma, I know how to deal with it. So you need to protect yourself in those situations, because in my own experience, I found most of the time people are very accepting when I've come out to them, when I've had no idea how they would react. But you do need to prepare yourselves for those moments when people could act in ways that are very negative towards you. So you have to be safe about it. I don't think there's one way to go about it, unfortunately. There's no like model, like do this and then this will happen, unfortunately. But to know that you need to keep your distance or be safe, to always be safe in those situations, to make sure that you're secure, and to also know that most people will respond well to it. You know, we often pump ourselves up to like have to deal with stigma, and a lot of times, at least in my perspective and how I've encountered it, it hasn't been as bad as I thought. So, my 2 cents.
Like Matt and Natasha is saying, there's no one way of looking at it. People often ask me what was the hardest part of cycling around the world, and it wasn't the rain, it wasn't the loneliness, it wasn't the muscle fatigue or anything. It was before I left. It was saying to the Vancouver School Board, this is what I'm dealing with, this is what I'd like to do. It was coming out of literally 2 decades. What am I talking about? I left when I was 40. 3 decades of hiding. The amount of emotional energy to hide, and the amount of time and energy wasted. Writing that first column in the newspaper with 250,000 readers, signing off with that first column before I left saying, you know, my name is Michael Schrader and I'm bipolar. That was the hardest thing to do. And I can't tell you how cathartic and how much more confident building it is to just be out with it. And it's the only way to fight the stigma. It comes back to this notion that the 7 million people have to speak out. I don't want to put any pressure on anyone, but you almost have an obligation. Otherwise, the negative storytelling will continue to tell the story of mental illness. And look up the word friend. Look up the word family in a dictionary, and if they can't deal with it, they never were friends, right?
Yeah, for me, speaking honestly here, I think the first time I ever kind of talked to anyone about it, I would call an accident and I would not advise it. It was probably after a night of drinking or something that I thought really close to a buddy of mine or something. But in general, I said I agree with this. Every situation's different, and I kind of just started with my close friends and family, and it does get easier after you see a few people react in a positive way. The most blunt way that anyone's ever told me about it is kind of my new approach to anything in life is I try never not to do something out of fear. And it's gotten easier and easier to identify. I think I was just telling you, I'm committing to this. I almost turned down this opportunity, and that would have been purely out of fear, and I would have regretted it for sure.
So let me flip it the other side of that conversation. For the family member or the colleague or the friend that you're sharing with, what do you want to hear back when you share your experience and your story? And what would you not want to hear? What would not be helpful?
Well, don't try and tell me I don't have it. Because that's not very helpful. What is helpful, though, is just, it can be extremely simple. Just say, okay, I don't understand what that is. Or maybe I'll ask for clarification, but I support you, I love you, I care about you. Tell me what you need. It's really not that complex.
Any form of empathy, like you're saying, friends and family, oh my gosh, if you can't get support and empathy from these inner core, then you've got to change your inner core. Yeah. Though we always can't change our family, can we? But I think the other thing is what they need to hear, and is acknowledgement. My bipolar episodes, my hypomania can make me obnoxious and behave like a jerk. And I don't want to ever use that as an excuse. And I think they need to hear that. Because if I've just been a complete jerk over the Thanksgiving weekend where the whole family that's gathered is now ready to, never do this again because of my behavior, they don't need to hear that, give them a break, right? Because I've affected them. right? I've made that hour they've spent with me that much more unpleasant. So I don't want to ever hear myself or that mental illness is an excuse.
I would generally just say along the same lines, but one thing that did annoy me at times, I know, was when people, probably just out of worry, they wanted right away to maybe come off as, or do research or turn into a bit of an expert. And my main message to people who have someone reaching out to them is that, like, it's okay not to be an expert. It's okay just to be okay with it and be there for them. It's nothing. It's not like you're a bad person if you don't know, the X's and O's of every mental illness. So, yeah.
Okay. A couple of people have asked about self-care, what each of you do for yourselves to help you during periods of anxiety or stress or pressure. Are there things that you do in terms of self-help, prayers and mantras is what the person said on the page. Somebody else asked, is there an app that you find helpful? Hey, what are things that you do for your own self-care?
One thing that's recently actually become a big part of my life is as a Christian, I do find that prayer. Other people who aren't religious, I guess the closest thing I compare it to them might be meditation or something. But for me, prayer has really helped, and I think it really just came from the idea that, and I think this is something that, religious or not religious, one idea that really spoke to me was the idea that this kind of unconditional love. It really was something that spoke to me at times when I needed help. So, yeah.
Though you see no evidence of it now, as I'm 30 pounds heavier than I need to be, I'd like to blame it on my two baby sons. No, but my point is that exercise has been really my first medicinal go-to. I think all the evidence shows the physical and mental health tie in very closely together. So just get out there for the walk, rain or shine. Doesn't even have to be a run, just some sort of physical movement. And then a strong social network, having a close group of friends and family.
Well, I was going to say an enormous amount of chocolate.
I don't know, but the Easter Bunny's about to come.
Oh, the Easter Bunny already came.
Moved in, eh?
Yeah. I do tons of yoga. I like to say it's angry yoga because that's usually if I'm really emotionally stressed out, I'll just do yoga and get it out and warrior two. As far as the apps question go, there are so many apps out there, and I wish I could recommend you one. But whoever asked that question, come talk to me after, and we can hash that out. Because it's so hard to know what you're looking for just based on I want an app. It's for what?
Okay. Please keep the questions coming down. If we could maybe ask the volunteers to just do one more trip up and down the aisle. A couple of people have asked about asking for help. What's been the hardest thing about asking and seeking help, both in terms of your own, the courage of reaching out and taking that step, but also what have been some of your experiences in terms of what you've kind of gotten back as you in that process of reaching out that have been hard, that you're willing to share with the group?
I think it's hard just saying I need help. It's something that took me a really long time to just tell even the people who were closest to me. I just asking them I need help, I need help right now, and then the response I would get is what kind of help you need? And I'm I have no idea, I just need help. So it's, what has been my journey is learning what help I need and knowing that is a journey that I have to make myself, is knowing in a way how to help myself, but how to help people help me. And that's really tough when you think about it. So when you're struggling or say you're really depressed or you're really anxious and your mind's frazzled and you can't think straight, having to help someone help you is extremely difficult. And you don't want to do it, but sometimes you kind of have to until they learn or they're intuitive enough to know. So sometimes you have to teach people how to help you.
Wow, thank you.
I probably, like I kind of said in my talk, for me it was always in athletics. I found the biggest challenge with how to approach people. Again, just because I believe that athletics might have some of the furthest to come in terms of accepting that, you know, there is mental illness and there's a whole mental side to the game. And, you know, it is starting to catch on a little bit. You're seeing more and more teams with, you know, sports psychologists and that there to work with their players. But in general, it harnesses a very, I almost think of it as like an old school army type culture of like, stand up for yourself, push yourself hard, last man standing. So it just seems like a stretch to say sometimes that you're hurting.
Yeah, the most difficult thing was for me the stigma, and it literally came to a head, I guess, when I was in college, and I had that suicide attempt where it was no longer even an option, so it was forced upon me. That said, it gets better. Like, if you think about it, the goal is to stop feeling the way you're feeling, and I can pretty much promise you that the fastest way to get out of that state that you're in is to seek help and to take advantage of the fact that you live in Canada in a time and place in human history where there's amazing avenues that you can take, whether it's medicine or psychology or a psychiatrist, or and now that the stigma's falling, and indirectly in you seeking help, you will also be part of the movement that is destigmatizing mental illness. So,
Okay. I'm going to paraphrase a few of the questions, and this will be our last question because we're very committed to getting out of here on time. Partly because we like to be prompt, and partly because SFU actually kicks us out if we're not out on time. That never happens to Ellen. Gosh. So let me ask. There's a few people I think who've sent down really beautifully worded messages that are obviously where there's people in this room that are struggling themselves. So if there's one thing that you could offer to a person who's here tonight, that would be some words of hope and some words of inspiration. In a few words, what would that be?
I think for me, one thing that really helped me, I'll remember it for the rest of my life, when I went to go get my stuff from my college dorm or apartment because I had to take off from school because I needed to go get help. My roommate, you know, he was the first one ever who told me, I think he said it more like stereotypical, everyone's probably heard the line about like this too shall pass, basically meaning just that like change is inevitable. And there's definitely been times where I really can't see how things could possibly get better, but I just believe in like change on its own, and that's been enough to get me through times. And then just being, you know, when you are having to be patient, just focusing on some of the little things in life, you know, getting up at a decent hour, taking a shower, eating breakfast, and feeling good or like celebrating those little wins. That really helped me through my tough times.
just to echo Jared, time he heals all wounds. That no matter what dark place you may be in or however anxious, it's an acute point, and that time heals all wounds. And secondly, you don't have to do it alone. You may not feel like there's a family member or friend that you can reach out to, but you know, there are doctors, there's, if need be, an emergency room nurse or doctor, right? These professions tend to attract empathetic, caring, intelligent people, and they do care. You don't have to go through anything like that alone.
So my message would be that you are beautiful, and you may not know it, but you will know it.
Thanks. Thank you, all three of you, Natasha and Jared and Michael. On behalf of all of us, thank you so much. for this evening.